The Paul Leslie Interviews.
One of the great pleasures of this show is to welcome the people who bring us music. Our guest on this episode is a singer, songwriter, and recording artist, Mr. Beau Ramsey. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Paul.
Who is Beau Ramsey?
Well, that's a good question. Beau Ramsey is a musician, I guess, is maybe a best answer to that question.
Where were you born?
I was born in Burlington, Iowa, which sits on the Mississippi River.
What was life like growing up?
Well, it was interesting. And, I grew up, I was born in 1951, so, just in regard to music, I experienced, as a young person, I experienced a lot of great music, which was exciting. And then, I kind of had a classic, I guess you could call it classic kind of childhood. I have my mother and father, and I have one sister, and my mother was at home, my father worked. So I had a good childhood.
Can you tell us about some of your favorite music as a young person?
Yeah. I remember, of course, the Beatles happened when I was young, and that was really explosive and very exciting, and it was hard to miss, I remember seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show on television, and then just becoming aware of that, and then, a lot of music kind of came at the same time, like, the Rolling Stones, and they called it the British Invasion, and then, at the same time, in America, there was a lot of great music happening. The whole Motown sound was very popular, and back then, when you listened to the radio, you could just turn on AM radio and hear, Marvin Gaye or the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix. This is when I was, like an early teenager. And so it was tremendous. And, I was really affected by it.
How did you get into blues music?
Well, that's a good question. And I got into blues a little bit later when I went to college. And I went to college in a little school in Missouri. And this was during the Vietnam War. And I remember meeting some guys down there who... Actually, I had a roommate down there who kind of introduced me to blues music. I remember him, we had a record player in our apartment, and I remember he put a record on one day, and I remember listening to the sound coming out, and I just stood there kind of just shocked by what I was hearing, and I said, "Oh my God, what is that?" And he said it was Muddy Waters. And I just remember that. I still remember that moment of standing there looking down at the record player and the record going around and hearing that sound coming out, which was, and I wasn't even sure that I liked it. It was so kind of unsettling, and kind of unlike anything I'd heard. And then, of course, soon after, I couldn't get enough of it, and I was probably about 18, 19 years old.
And if you could put it into words, what is it you like about this kind of music?
Well, I guess just that initial impact of it was so strong and kind of powerful. I didn't even really even understand what was happening because it was just so new and fresh, and it was very powerful. And I wasn't even, that first time that I heard Muddy Waters, I just wasn't, I thought, oh my God, what is this? And I thought, I don't even know if I can listen to that. And then, of course, I, began to listen to it and began to really love it. And then that led me, I began to explore, other artists, blues artists, really got into it. But I think just the rawness of it and the fact that they were singing about it had a really strong human quality to it that I was drawn to.
I understand that your father was a musician?
Well, my father's a very interesting guy, and he's still alive. He's 96 years old, and born in 1914 in Richmond, Kentucky. He played guitar in a dance swing band in the 30s. He, later on, once I showed interest in the guitar, he gave me his guitar, and I still have it. It's a 1934 Gibson L7, which I'm a very proud owner of now, and but he played in a kind of dance swing band, full on, kind of almost a orchestra, a band leader, and the music stands with the band leader's initials on them, and they wore suits and tuxedos, and he played, rhythm guitar. But by the time I got into it, he had already quit, and he told me he put it down, and he wanted to have a family and provide for his family, so he put the guitar down, and that's kind of a little part of his story anyway.
What are some of your biggest influences in music?
Well, Muddy Waters, of course, and Albert King was a big influence on me. I remember hearing him, just hearing that sound. I think I heard the sound before I even knew what he looked like or anything. And I just remember that sound was just so clear and direct and powerful and well stated. So I became a big fan of Albert King early on and to this day. And, there's so many. I remember hearing Johnny Cash really early on. In fact, I think that's one of his songs was the first song I attempted to play on the guitar, Folsom Prison Blues. And then that also meant Luther Perkins was the guitar player, I think, with Johnny at that time. And Luther Perkins had that kind of low down guitar sound, which I really enjoyed. In fact, that was the first thing I attempted to play, was to kind of Luther Perkins kind of guitar.
What is the Iowa music scene like?
Well, gosh, things have changed, so much, especially with the internet being involved now in our lives. There's music here, and there's some good music here, and I don't know, to be honest with you. I know some of the artists here, and then there's some that I don't know. And there's a few clubs here where I live in Iowa City. There's a few clubs hanging on, and so I guess, and I travel quite a bit, and, I would say that it's comparable to a lot of places I go. It's I don't know how vibrant it is, but there's some good artists here, and there's some people around that, people that are really trying to make it happen, as far as like organizers, club owners, promoters. There's some of those people. So it's alive anyway.
I wanted to talk about the musician Greg Brown. How did you meet him?
Well, that's interesting. I met Greg back in the early 80s. At that time, we kind of ran in different circles. He was a solo artist, kind of folk oriented, and I was in bands, and so we kind of didn't hang out in the same places. But I remember we both put our first record out, and I didn't really know Greg. I think I bumped into him one time, and he said, "Yeah, I just made a record," and I said, "Yeah, I just made one too." And so we exchanged records. I remember doing that. We didn't really know each other at that point, but just enough to kind of, hey, here's my record, and here's my record. And then not long after that, I remember I had been thinking about his music, because he had put maybe a couple of records out by then. And I was thinking about his music, driving down the road in my car, and I turned the radio on. And as soon as I turned the radio on, it was Greg singing. And I thought, well, I should get a hold of this guy. And so I did. I called him up, and he said, well, why don't you come over? And I went over, and I kind of what I was trying to say to him was that, I basically was saying, hey, I think we could make music together, and I'm open to that. And anyway, he didn't have a whole lot to say about that, but about a month later, he called me up and he said, hey, why don't you come over? I got something to run by you. And I went over and he talked about doing a record and hiring me. And that was kind of the official beginning of our musical relationship.
Personally, I really enjoy your song, Fragile, the title track of that album, Fragile. I was hoping you could tell us about it.
Well, yeah, that song is, I remember writing that song, and I remember I remember writing it, and I remember recording it on the fly. I was in Nashville on some other business, and this buddy of mine was there, and he had a little recording set up, and he said, hey, you got anything? Maybe we can put it down, and so I said, well, I've got this one thing. It's kind of not finished, or I'm not sure about it all the way, but I went ahead and recorded it, and then I didn't do anything with it for quite a long time. And then when I went to make this record, that song kind of reappeared, and I pulled it out and was kind of messing with it, and I never really performed the song, ever. So I pulled it out and kind of trying to get to know it again, and I couldn't quite get it. And I remember I was playing it really slow, and I was talking to my wife about it, and at that time we had a young son who was only maybe 2 years old, and he was sitting in his high chair, and I was talking to my wife about this song, and then my little boy was just like start pounding on his high chair, just like kind of pounding, kind of like rocking, And I thought, oh, okay, I should rock that thing. Kind of interesting. But so then the song kind of came alive, and I recorded it.
Another song on that album, I was hoping you could tell us about the inspiration behind Away.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a song really, but I titled it. So it's just a kind of a riff, that I had that I thought emoted. And I did it just spontaneously. I remember we were recording and we were doing songs, and I thought, hey, let's do this little thing, I've got this little thing. I just want to have it. I was thinking having it be almost like an interlude. But I thought the riff emoted something, so that's why I recorded it, and that's why I included it on the record.
We're joined by singer-songwriter Beau Ramsey. One more song I wanted to ask about from the album Fragile. In the Woods. I think that's a very pretty song.
Thank you. Well, that song has a subtitle. It's called In the Woods, and then in parentheses I had it, A Prayer for the Planet. So that it was kind of a subtitle. I guess that's really kind of what that, even though it's an instrumental, it's in my mind, or it was offered as a prayer for our planet.
I kind of wanted to get into another one of your albums, Stranger Blues. It's really an interesting collection of tunes.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Paul.
There's an instrumental song on that album that I was really drawn to.
That was a real labor of love for me, and it was just really kind of a personal thing of me. Just it's my way of trying to tip my hat to blues music because it's been such a huge influence on me, and I think it's so important. It's a part of our natural history, and it's undeniable. And I think people should. I made the record for personal reasons. I just wanted to kind of pay tribute to all the great artists who living and gone, and such great songs. And in that record, I tried to. It was really challenging. I thought, I want to make a blues record. And then once I really kind of, okay, I'm going to cut some time out. I'm going to make some time to do this. And then once I actually kind of faced that idea, I thought, oh, my God, how am I going to do this? because the blues, it's so vast and so deep. There's so much great music in that realm. And so the angle I took was to just choose songs, since I'm kind of a song guy, songs written by some of my favorite blues artists, and that's what I tried to do. And the instrumental that I'm thinking you're referring to is Freight Train.
That's the one.
Yeah, Freight Train, which was written by a woman named Elizabeth Cotton, and it's a song with lyrics, and it's one of the great American songs. And my wife, actually, who co-produced that record with me, Pieta Brown, it was her idea to do an instrumental of that song, and I thought that was a great idea.
I have to agree with her. It's a great track.
Thank you.
One of your songs, Either Way, has been recorded by Jeff Bridges.
You're right. Well, I met Jeff. I was doing a show with Greg Brown in Santa Barbara, California. And we got done with the show, and we were out back of the theater. I was standing there talking to some people, and some guy came up to me and goes, "Hey, I would like to introduce you to my friend Jeff." And I turned around, and there's Jeff Bridges, and it's the first time I'd met him. And it was one of those meetings that, I don't know if this has happened to you, Paul, but sometimes you kind of know you're going to meet somebody, or that you just feel you're kind of naturally drawn to something about, in my case, it's been people's work. I was always a fan of Jeff Bridges. I really enjoyed his work, and I thought somehow, just almost subconsciously, I kind of knew I was going to meet him. It's really weird, but I met him, and we kind of hit it off. He goes, "Hey, what kind of guitar is that you're playing?" And we went in and we looked at, he played the guitar, and this was right before he did that movie, Crazy Heart. And I look back on that meeting, and I think he was already preparing for that role. He was out doing some homework, I think. Anyway, we kind of hit it off, and we talked on the phone, we emailed, and he actually, when he was doing Crazy Heart, he said, "Hey, if you or Greg or Pieta, if you got any songs that haven't been recorded, just send them out, and maybe something will land in the movie." And so I sent that song Either Way, along with a Greg Brown song that actually did get in the Crazy Heart movie, a song called Brand New Angel. Well, then my song didn't make the movie, but here he's recorded a song for his record, and so I'm very honored and really touched by that.
When somebody listens to one of your songs, what is it you hope the listener gets out of that experience?
What do I hope they get? Yeah, well, that's a good question. I hope that they get some enjoyment, and I hope that I just hope that it affects them in a positive way, I guess. Yeah, I don't think about that very much, but I do play music to try and make a positive contribution to our world. I guess I hope that someone listening to one of my songs gets something positive from it.
I feel like you can learn a lot about someone from this answer. What is your all-time favorite meal?
Meal? M-E-A-L?
Yes, sir.
Wow-wee. Well, I'm going to have to say one of my moms. My mom's gone now. I have so many great memories, and one of the memories is just being very fortunate to eat food that she prepared, because it was good. She was from Louisiana, and she knew how to cook, brother. Yeah.
I can definitely relate. I do love Louisiana cooking.
Well, you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah.
My last question. What would you, Beau Ramsey, like to say to anyone who's listening in?
I remember I just did this, I guess it's about a year ago or a year and a half ago, just over a year ago, I did this tour with my wife, opening shows for Mark Knopfler. who was in the band Dire Straits, the singer and guitar player. And I remember sitting across the table from him, and he said to me, he goes, "Beau, don't forget to just enjoy. Just enjoy." I just remember it, it just stuck with me. And, I encourage people to enjoy life and keep it on the high road.
Beau Ramsey, it's been a great pleasure to speak to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, I appreciate it, Paul. I appreciate you contacting me, and it's my pleasure.